Welcome to Mrs. Butterscotch's Butter Biscuits. With me, Mrs. Butterscotch, and my lovely co-host, Cornish Calivarian. How are you doing, Cornish?
I'm doing fine.
No, you're a man.
I'm doing fine.
Yes, you are. How was your ball surgery last week? I heard that they had to take off some balls of you because they were so big. Some part of your balls.
I had to take off some balls.
Yeah.
That implies they take both of them, or I have more than
balls.
two.
They had to take off. How did it went? How did it go?
Mrs. Butterscotch, I feel like your voice has gotten a little bit higher since
No,
last
it
time
did
we
not.
talked. Did you maybe get kicked in the nuts or something before?
I don't even have nuts. How
Are you
dare
sure?
you? How dare you, Mr.
Cornish
Clavarian.
It's a real
Sounds
name.
like a disease.
Clavarian.
Clavarian syndrome.
Clavarian disease. Oh, I'm sorry, but we have detected some serious case of Clavarian. But doctor, what is it? We don't know yet.
It's like a mix of chlamydia and something else.
Clavarian, it's a company. We're back, everybody, with a new episode of Hello, I'm Listening. And I don't know if you saw already, but we have a new artwork, cover art.
We do.
Which is inspired by vintage movie posters of the 40s and 50s. So like a little hand-drawn aesthetic, like romance thing. I thought it would be nice for the new season. So if you can head over to our Patreon and, subscribe there and help us out a little bit if you want to. We appreciate it. That's like the thing that helps us the most to keep this thing going. And you will see things like that as like a first. So we post things like that as like a little sneak peek, and also we post like little episode hints what might come. We also ask people what they want to hear, and you are basically a more integrated part, and you get things. You get a shout out, and you can get a shirt. So your dad is coming soon.
My dad is coming soon. My dad is coming in a little over a week.
And we probably are doing a podcast with him as like a first real guest.
Real guest?
Yeah, like
all our guests have been fake. We've been lying to you.
We have to admit it now. They all have been AI. No, like in a first in-house guest.
Yeah.
All of our guest spots have been over the internet. Over the internet, you see?
The interwebs.
The interwebs. We have integrated a very complicated system, you see? Where we talk to people who are far, far away, not even in this time. How we do it, we don't know. It's basically time travel. What, you're 7 hours behind? How is that possible? I can tell you what's happening. Yeah. No, but he will be most likely. If he doesn't want to, then we can't do it. But we think that he might want to,
think so.
And so he will be a guest. But we only have to figure out how we do it.
Yeah.
Because our setup, we might have to move everything over there, so he maybe sits on the couch or something.
Yeah.
And we loom over him. And I already have a topic, but I don't want to give it away.
So?
I might post it on Patreon. So go to the Patreon, goddammit. That's it. So let's go into the podcast episode. Today we're talking about that.
That was my cue.
That was your cue, goddammit.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you forgot and you were looking at your phone because you said today we're talking about, and then you grabbed your phone all weird like you forgot. We are talking about misogyny.
Misogynistic behavior that is basically kind of still practiced.
I mean,
more or less
practiced. I mean, it's part of every woman's daily life. It's fact. It exists.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give it, unless you had it, but I was going to say I could give a very quick definition.
Do it.
For anyone who doesn't know what misogyny is. It is a strong dislike or prejudice against women, often leading to discrimination, disrespect, or harmful attitudes and actions toward them based on their gender.
The thing is, most misogyny today, at least from what I see and hear, verbalized by other men is jokes or like funny, and I put that under air quotes, comments or just funny things they say, which are usually not, first of all, not remotely funny, and second, highly inappropriate.
Do you mean like sexist language, like, or do you
for
mean-
example?
Okay.
Then just like, you know, what is it called in English? Like if you say something, but it could have another meaning, like a double standard. No, it's not a double standard. Like a hidden second meaning. You say something, but you know, it could also point to that. Very obvious. And just like inappropriate jokes in general, where they think it's funny, and because maybe they have like a higher position, or they feel like they have a little power over them, they are allowed to, or in their position they feel more confident to voice those things. Or I mean, just in general, like if men are, you know, drinking with their buddies and they just talk shit about their wives or girlfriends, or just in general about women.
I mean, women do that too. And the funny thing is that, you know, if I go out with other women, a lot of times they'll talk about their partners. Yeah. In like a way like that, where I don't know if men do. I assume men do it too. But, you know, they'll just be complaining mostly, like, oh, you won't believe what he does, or he does this all the time. It's so stupid. Sure. And I just think, like, I don't really do that. Like, I don't really take part in that part of the conversation, because, I mean, sometimes if there's something funny that happens, like if you made spaghetti again or something, I'll say something like that. But it's never like, I never say anything where I'm like complaining about you as a person and my partner. Oh,
I do all the time. Obviously there are two things. If you I wouldn't say complain, but if you talk openly with someone else, with a friend most of the time, about something that the other person did, and you just voice your opinion, or your, you know, the other than frustration, and you just want to get it out, or you want to just get a different perspective or opinion on the subject matter, that's totally fine.
That's different.
Versus I'm sitting here and just shitting on my partner and completely derailing and basically just making them seem like the worst person or whatever, and seemingly, you know, every other person who hears that thinks like, why are they together? If he really, or if she really, you know, feels that way. So I just wanted to say like a little example of behavior that I encountered. When was that? In May or April this year, when I went for a shoot to Vienna at this company. I don't want to say the company's name, but it's a pretty big company, a worldwide company, and we filmed there. And it's not directly correlated to that company, but it was like a partner company where we had to go afterwards to shoot like a little interview and a few B-rolls. And the boss of that company we interviewed, and he made some very, very misogynistic, sexist
jokes,
remarks. For example, we filmed this woman who was working on a table, taking apart and also putting together basically phones or like smart devices. And he made a very sexist comment about her appearance, and that she should just open her blouse a little bit so the video is nicer. And that was the first thing. And I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? How is that? How are you not saying anything? And it's a small company, so they don't have really HR or something else. So the only thing that woman could do is basically go to the AK, which is a Arbeiterkammer, which is basically workers union, or a place where you can go for help for questions in that regard.
Commerce, Chamber of Labor, something.
Basically. And they help you with that in legal reasons, but also in things like that. And the other thing was, then we were basically done shooting and we were standing outside. I was packing the car with my gear, and with me was a colleague, a female colleague, and a male colleague. And the female colleague basically was just producing and overlooking everything. And he then made they never met before.
Mm-hmm.
And then he made some super weird comments, and he said something about like, don't be naughty, something like that. Something in that regard, like, don't be naughty, just be a little nice too sometimes, and with a wink and stuff like that. Ugh. Where it's like, what? Ugh. First of all, you've never met that person. And that's just not appropriate. And the first thing we talked about... How old
is he?
I mean, he's like 50 something.
See, that's inexcusable.
The thing is, there's no excuse, even if you're 70.
There's no excuse, but I'm more lenient with people who are 80 to 90 because I deal with it a lot at work. I work in healthcare. I work in a doctor's office, and it's an orthopedic doctor, so most of our patients are old. The majority between 60 and 90, and we have some younger ones, but mostly older people. And I get it a lot. There's a lot of shit that you hear. Yeah, and sure. I'm much more lenient about it with, like, I don't really encourage it or acknowledge it ever, but I'm not as bothered by it when it's like an 84-year-old man versus a 50-year-old man who should know better.
Sure.
It doesn't excuse it for me. Like, I never think it's okay, but
I get it.
I'm more accepting or
I wouldn't say accepting.
I'm more...
You overlook it more if the person's older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they come from a generation where, maybe no one's telling them it's not okay anymore. Yeah, I encounter things like that all the time. Like when we were sailing this summer, my uncle said he always talks about his wife in a very weird way. They love each other. And understanding, sorry, that was the word.
Understanding, yeah. But he also said some things. And I also, for example, he was talking about when they travel by plane, she always is shitting herself when the plane takes off. And what she does, she comes close to him and takes his hand and just like close. And he was, making fun of it and stuff. And I said, you have to look at her position, at her side of things. She feels safe with you. She takes your hand because that makes her feel better. And then he was like, oh yeah, I mean,
that should be like, oh, this person really loves me and trusts me.
Yeah, and things like that, only because you're in a male company and you want to be funny or you want to seem a certain way, and you use that as an excuse to be misogynistic or sexist, or just shit on the person you love or a friend even. It's not okay.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that everybody should do is just talk about it and actively tell that person, even though it might not seem obviously if you tell someone you don't know, you've never met, that behavior is not okay, and they hear that for the first time, for example, they will probably either laugh at you or maybe get angry or feel attacked, whatever.
Well, especially in today's climate where women are speaking out much more. We're feeling like we can speak out more. We're feeling more empowered to do so. And we're getting shit for it. It's like saying you're a feminist is like the worst possible thing you can say, because everyone's like, oh, feminism, you're so extreme. You're just against men. You hate men. And I'm like, no. Yeah. But those are exactly the people who react that way are exactly the people who are the problem. Because if you, first of all, women have been hated on forever.
I mean, it's statistically proven that women are...
If feminists are hating on men, which is not the case, we're shining a light on men, sure. But we're not saying we hate men.
And feminism is basically just a stance for women. That's it. It doesn't say that you're against men. It doesn't say that you hate men. It doesn't
can be a feminist.
I consider myself a feminist, and even though I don't like the term because of the climate, but I can also say
but that's why I like the term.
If someone asks me, I say sure I am, but I am for women's rights. I'm for equal pay. I'm for equality between men and women. That's what I am, and that's basically the definition of feminism.
Yeah, that's all we want.
Right, and therefore there shouldn't be a discussion like that in the first place. Yeah. As I already said, speaking about it, I think it's so fucking important to just talk about it. And when we drove away from the shoot that day, the first thing we talked about in the car for 10 minutes was exactly those comments and his behavior. And my colleague, my female colleague said, I don't know, I wanted to say something, but at the same time, he's technically a customer of the company, and our bosses know each other super well, and so it could backfire pretty fast. But then she said, in hindsight, I should have said something. I should have voiced my opinion. And I said, I was in the same position. I was like, I kind of want to say something. And it's so hard because if you never, if everybody's quiet, and I bet most of these people in that workplace felt the same, but they knew him, that's how he is, blah, blah. If everybody would say something, that behavior would stop pretty fast. But if nobody says something ever, then that behavior won't stop because he will never be, corrected or I don't want to say punished, but nothing comes of it.
Another side to misogyny, I mean, there's the sexist language and the comments and things like that, but objectification, basically.
I mean, sure, yeah.
But stereotyping, like gender stereotyping, like basically that women don't have the same capabilities as men do because of how they're built or because of, whatever, because we have a vagina.
I mean, yeah.
And, I experienced a lot of that when we were building.
Yeah, sure.
And
sure.
That was frustrating. I had some frustrating moments while we were building because, we worked out a lot. I mean, now I can't obviously lift as much.
Why? Because you're a woman, huh?
Because I'm growing a human.
Yeah.
But we worked out a lot. I'm strong. I'm not like a weak person, and I worked really hard to be able to lift things more than a certain amount of weight. And even though I don't maybe look like it, I was never that person who had like the super visible muscles, but I could carry a decent amount of weight and do a lot of hard work that maybe women don't typically do in Austria. And I put in Austria because it's very traditional here, and it's rare that you see a woman on a construction site, even if it's your own
It's becoming
home.
more so, but
It's pretty rare. And the people we were working with are all like our parents' generation, essentially. Most of them.
They're not used to seeing that.
Yeah. And the amount of comments that I got
almost every time.
Almost every single day that we were working.
Yeah.
Someone would say something.
Yeah.
Whether it was, "Are you sure you can lift that?"
Yeah.
Shouldn't you carry this instead, something lighter?
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not pregnant? Like when I was lifting something, you can't carry things when you're pregnant. I was like, yeah, and like, you sure you're not pregnant? And at that time, nobody knew that we were trying to get pregnant. That I should put that in there as well. So it's just these comments that people make based on your gender, and they assume that your capabilities are less so because of that. Because there was no other reason for them to assume.
And that's what I meant with joking. A lot of misogyny comes from those stereotypes and by joking about it. Oh yeah, women, blah, they can't carry things. She's weak, blah blah blah, and things like the stereotypes that women only should be in kitchen and clean and look after the kids and stuff like that. And the thing is, it's not just only jokes. There's still people out there who believe that wholeheartedly. And the thing is, I have nothing against women who decide to be a mother and a housewoman, housewife. And I
mean, that's a fucking job too.
Exactly. I just wanted to say, there's nothing bad about it because it's a fucking job, and it's not a
9 to 5.
A 9 to 5 job. No, it's a fucking 24-hour job, technically. I mean, depends if you have a small kid or not. But
It's still a 24-hour job. You still have to be 24/7 available to your child.
That, yeah, sure. But and the amount of I don't want to shit on that at all. I'm especially these days where with income and stuff and money being a big factor for a lot of people, that a lot of women can't afford, or families can't afford, that the woman doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Which is good and bad, obviously. But I think it's still admirable if a woman chooses, or a man maybe chooses to stay at home and be a houseman or a housewife, and runs that whole deal. Because otherwise you have to either pay someone to look after your kids or have
I also
grandparents.
don't like the term housewife. I know that's the term, but I don't like the term housewife.
Sure, I don't like it either because it's so
it's not
negatively.
what it is. It's
right.
She's a mom. Or maybe they don't have kids. It's fine if she doesn't have kids and she doesn't work and she takes care of the house. It's also a choice. That's also fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has such a negative connotation around it now when you say housewife.
Yeah, sure, it does. It does. No, but everybody knows what I mean with that.
Yeah, sure.
But what I, for example, like to do when obviously the thing is I don't surround myself with people who are that. But if I'm surrounded by people who talk about things like that, I always say something. At least if I know the people a little better. I mean, the thing is, I try to get to a point where I don't care about things like that anymore. But at the same time, I'm self-employed, and if a customer says something like that, then there are boundaries for me where I can say things and I can't say things, And
it's definitely harder in a work environment.
It totally is. But the one thing I can do is I can't stop working with those people.
Sure.
If I'm uncomfortable, if I don't like what they're saying or what they're putting out there, or how their beliefs, then I can't stop working with them. And that's something that I've done. But
I think there are, and I'm no expert at this, but there have to be resources out there for how to approach those situations in the workplace, like how to still respectfully, like when it's a client, when it's a customer, when it's a coworker, how to respectfully approach those situations without it being like, something that you have to worry, am I going to lose my job because I'm saying something, or am I going to lose this customer for saying something?
And it's, the thing is, most of the time it's in situations where I am in a professional field where I do my job, where I'm hired to do my job. I'm a service provider. I provide a service, and therefore sometimes it's not my place to say something. If I'm closer with the client already because I've worked with them multiple times, or I have seen them so many times before, and the vibe is good, then obviously I would say something.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think it's not your place to say something. It is your place to say something. You can always say something, and people should always say something. But I also understand when we don't, because I don't always say something, even when it's directed directly at me. Like it's someone saying something sexist to me. So I don't say something either when I'm at work, because I tell like my boss, or I write a note in the program, like our system, so we know that, okay, this person's maybe not someone we want to have here all the time. But
I agree.
That's something that I also try to get better at, because I think there's nothing wrong with saying something. There's a way to do it without being like, I don't know. This is the problem. It goes with the whole thing. If a woman says something, so if a man were to say something to another man who made a sexist comment or joke or whatever, it would maybe be seen as like, yeah, okay, and then brushed off, or maybe not so super accepted, but still acknowledged. Yeah. If a woman does it, she's a bitch.
She's hysterical.
Yeah.
Don't be hysteric, woman. Like
you must be on your period.
A slap. Yeah. Go back to the kitchen now. You must miss your kitchen. That's why you're hysteric.
But that's what's so frustrating. That's another really frustrating aspect of the whole thing, is that when we speak out, we're hysterical, or we're bitches, or we're
trying to get attention or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
No, that's why I think it's so important to be a male ally.
To be a man. Sorry.
Nah, it's true.
So I think it's so important to be a man.
Done.
End podcast.
End the podcast. No, a male ally, because if for example, if you imagine a workplace thing where a man harasses a woman and makes sexist comments all the time, simply based on her appearance or whatever, and other male co-workers see that too and experience it too, then it's always better if more people come forward and say something and hold together, because it's it's not about firing a person, it's not about getting rid of them, it's more about correcting the behavior. And maybe also, you know, in a workplace you have to be professional, and in the workplace there's nowhere should be a place for that behavior. Nowhere. But if you work in a professional environment with other people, you should respect them no matter what. If you have different beliefs, that's fine. You don't work there because you all believe a certain way. No, you work there because you like your job, hopefully, and they respect you as you should them. And I mean, obviously, in like if you are somewhere employed, it's much easier because usually you have an HR department or even like a chamber of workers where you can go to and direct your concern or your problems, and they will help you, hopefully, unless the HR is also misogynistic.
The problem is a lot of those issues get swept under the rug because a lot of people respond to it like not necessarily in HR. I think HR tends to take it a little bit more serious, but if you were to go somewhere, especially with social media and stuff like that, I think nowadays a lot of companies take it very seriously.
But that's my point. It depends. I think it depends. If someone just makes a comment, I think a lot of times it's swept under the rug. Like, it happens. Yeah, he's a man. Yeah, he's this age. Yeah, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
like, it's just kind of like, sorry that it happened, but can't do anything about it.
I agree. There's still a lot of excuses for people, certain age, certain group. Who have that behavior. And you have to, I mean, only because you're a certain age, that doesn't mean you can behave a certain way, you know. If you're racist and you're 70, sure, one could argue, he grew up in a different time, blah, blah. At the same time, only because he grew up, we live in this time now, and the world is changing. We don't have slaves anymore. We don't, we let women drive now with the car, not in every country, but in most countries. So things change for better, and therefore I have to adapt. If I want to be part of that society, my behavior as well. And a lot of people don't get that. And I think one of the biggest problems is that the joking about those things kind of open up the whole thing again in, it's just jokes, it's just fun.
Well, you know what also opened it up again is the fact that movies and TV and things like that, like just media in general, is being there. It's much more self-aware, and it's becoming much more like, let's recognize women in film, and let's recognize women in comedy, and let's recognize, and that wasn't really a big thing before. And
look back 20,
representation years. Talk about representation, and not just for women, but for people of the LGBTQ plus community. That's also massive that they are getting representation in entertainment these days.
Mainstream entertainment, that's the word, mainstream.
And it's also opened up a lot of trolls.
Sure.
And issues with like social media and stuff, where people are like, oh, it's so woke, it's so
the woke
why
thing.
do we need this, and why do women need this? And
I mean, at this point, it's if you use that as a comment, or as a way to excuse something, or as a way to describe your disliking of something, distaste of something, then maybe you should rethink things. I mean, we talked about the woke thing before on the podcast, and it's pretty stupid, and how the whole movement got even. It's just so fucking dumb.
Yeah, but anytime a movie mentions the word feminism, or anytime a movie,
you can bet there are 10,000 people.
And it's so frustrating. It's like, it's relevant, and it doesn't even have to mention feminism. It can just be like, someone comments. It's not even about someone comments something about a movie. They're like, oh, I love all the female cast. I love how there's so many women in this movie. That could be the only comment, and they're like, "This is so stupid." It's
yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean, part of being on the internet is everybody voices their opinion, which is fine. But then at the same time, I think it's so valuable to have a discussion, not necessarily an intelligent discussion, but at least a discussion about opinions where you don't.
They're not able.
No,
to
they're
do
not
that
able
anymore.
to. They're just, it's a work done. And I'm like,
No, it's
you
not
don't
just-
even know what you mean. You just throw that word around because a lot of
It's not just that; it's they're
media
spewing their opinion as if it's fact.
that
And
too, yeah.
You can't have a discussion with people because you can't state your own opinion without them feeling attacked.
Yeah.
And so they come back at you just trying to prove
Yeah.
your opinion wrong
Yeah.
instead of being like, I see your side, but this is my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we just talk? I don't understand why people can't talk like that anymore. It's just, it's always, I'm right.
Yeah.
I read it on this article.
Yeah.
Therefore,
Yeah.
it must be true and everything you're saying is wrong and you're stupid.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's all these insults being thrown around and you're questioning someone's intelligence based on their opinion of something. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think I don't want to let it go too long because it's a very broad topic and you can basically go from there to anywhere. But in the grand scheme, I just want to add one more thing, and it's like the counterpart to the feminism movement. I don't want to say movement, but that's what it kind of is.
It is.
Is the toxic masculinity and this way of proving that you're a manly man and that shit, because that directly goes against what feminism stands for, and purposefully not being able to show compassion and understanding, empathy, stuff like that, which a feminist movement from the standpoint of a man needs, because I'm a man. I don't know how it feels like. I mean, I have been whistled at when I walked through the streets of the Castro district in San Francisco. And on the first day, it was kind of nice, but on the second day, it was kind of annoying. And my ass got grabbed. I mean, at least the person asked. But I felt all the eyes following me. And so I had that little glimpse into that world. And to be honest, I would not like to have that for every day of my life. And therefore, and that's the only little glimpse of that stuff. But everything else I only can imagine because I'm a man. So I think it's so important to be an ally and to be empathetic and look and try to at least look into what could that mean for that person versus what does it mean to me and how does it affect me if I'm just, being on the right side of things, and the right side being just, giving them the voice and the ear they need.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just about listening. Sometimes it's just about, okay, I hear you, I listen, and maybe if I'm in a position where I can do something, we do something. Done.
Yeah. I would close reading something.
Yeah, read something.
Unless you have something else to say.
No.
If you have not seen the Barbie movie,
Ooh.
I feel like this just fits so well.
First of all, we did a podcast on Barbenheimer, and you should have seen it by now.
But if you haven't, first of all, go see it. What are you even doing? And there is, I think about this monologue almost daily since seeing that movie, where America Ferrera's character has this whole monologue, this whole speech about what it means to be a woman in today's society. And I just feel like it fits so well. Like, I almost stood up and cheered when it was over. It was so good. But I thought I would just read it because it fits well. So she says, "It is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we always have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin, and you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you also have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of a sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is true, and if all of that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know.
Yeah, it's a very powerful monologue, and obviously it's a movie, so some things probably don't apply to everybody, but overall, I think it's a very good stance on how women sometimes feel, and it's
most of the time feel
right, and it's about a feeling. You know, it doesn't mean that all of that is necessarily 100% true all the time, but if you feel like that, then that's valid because it's feeling.
If you feel like that for a reason, and it's
right.
because society makes us feel that way.
Exactly. And with that, we close the podcast. This was the last episode, so bye. No, it wasn't. I'm kidding. Imagine.
Until never.
Imagine the one person is like, no, what should I do with my life now? Yeah, if you like what you have, just subscribe, please, to the podcast. Please rate the podcast on Apple and Spotify. It's just, on Spotify, it's one click, basically. And on Apple, it's also just one click. We really, really, really would love that. As we said, head over to our Patreon, where you can support us even more. We appreciate that, and say hi to Jill for us.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe. And
I think maybe Mrs. Butterscotch needs to say hi to Joe.
Oh, hi, Joe. They told me to say hi to you. You're on Patreon? I don't know what that is, but good for you. You can like our things on Instagram. If you have our Instagram, follow us there. You can see things, from the podcast where we record it, from things we put out, from just stuff we post. And yeah, that's it.
That's all, everybody.
Go!
Watch out for deer.